Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, baby metal fan, and today I'm going to talk about a song off the most recent album, Maya, off the other one. The song came out, obviously it's been out since the beginning of the year. The video came out in the summer and I kind of missed it because, ironically, I was in Japan at the time traveling, and so I didn't really get a chance to sit down and look at it properly until later, by which time the initial response had already happened, so I wasn't rushing to get it done. But anyway, let's get to it today and walk through and see what we can see. So there's no build up to this at all. We go straight into it. It's really hard, really heavy. Unlike most of the other songs that were released incrementally early on from the album that tended to be more lyrical, more melodic, with larger periods of calm and reflection. And this is full on intense, that heavy guitar sound, faintly djenty metal. And it sets up a song which is deceptively complicated, I think.
You got a power, Maya, magic power, magic power, Maya.
So, lyrically, this is a relatively simple song in terms of the sheer quantity of it, because it's quite repetitive. There's also quite a lot of English in it. But it's one of those songs where the word-to-word translation doesn't really give you what you need in terms of an interpretation. And we'll explore that as we go. But the first part, of course, is all in English, and it frames the title of the song, Maya. So, as everybody knows, Maya is taken from the Sanskrit word for magic and illusion. It's also one of the alternate names for Lakshmi, the Hindu goddess of wealth, fortune, power, and beauty. So if we put these two ideas together, we get this idea of magical power, which is itself somehow deceptive.
Illusion, I would say, is one function of Maya. Maya is a person. It is one personality, which we also call as Maya Devi. So Maya has a function that it bewilders the living being. It deludes, it creates delusion.
So Maya hides the truth,
yes,
and projects a false virtual reality.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
You got the power, Maya, magic power, and then we move into the initial part of the verse.
You are the magic It's an illusion lose control.
Say my name, you are the magic, Maboroshi, Maboroshi meaning illusion. Maho ga aru nara, say my name. I'll deal with the whole thing. It's an illusion. Mayakashi, say my name. Mayakashi, obviously meaning deception, but also punning on Maya, the goddess and abstraction of illusion and magic of the title. Damasu no yume yaburete, lose control, hibana chiru yoru ni wa, wakari airu hazusa kito, owari nante nai kara. So, taken together, so you say my name, you're the magic and illusion. It's real. This is hard to do. If I could The reason it's hard to do is because I'm having to add a lot of pronouns that simply are not there, right? So there's a lot of I's and U's. And I looked at Capable Paramedics translation, which is really great. And I talked to David Boyd at UNCC. And the problem I think that everybody's facing with this is that we're having to insert the I's and U's to clarify the sentence, but they're not there. So we can say, you're the magic, an illusion. If I could cast a spell, because it's an illusion, it's a fake, I would trick you with that deceptive image. And then on a night when dreams are broken and controls are lost, sparks fly, we could know each other for sure since no end comes. And as I say, I'm adding the U's and the I's, but it's very difficult to string this together. So we get an impression of the idea that everything is magical, everything is illusory, and the nature of the magic is to create false images which deceive people, right? So it sounds in some ways like the speaker of the song is Maya, this goddess of magic and deception and beauty and prosperity and all those other things. This business about when the broken dreams and controls are lost and everything goes crazy and we would then somehow be able to connect is harder to pinpoint. It's an image of coming together in a moment where all the illusion kind of goes away, and we're in a moment which is out of time, right? Since there's Owari nante kaikara, because the moment doesn't end, right? So one possible way, right? Before we get into the more abstract philosophical stuff, I think one possible way, if we're thinking of it simply as representing two human people, forget Maya the goddess for a second. If it's two human people, if you saw this, right? And we've seen these kinds of verses before in songs like Akatsuki, which are framed in a romantic way. If we saw this as a romantic moment, right? On this night when dreams are broken, sparks fly, we lose control. I mean, it sounds sensual, sexual, whatever way you want to put it. And we would know each other, no end comes, that sort of timeless moment of intimacy. To me, it feels that way. If we're thinking of it in human terms, this sort of powerful moment of connection between people, escaping from the illusion, that to me feels really human. So here's another way of thinking about it. On the night when dreams are broken, controls are lost, and sparks fly, then we could know each other. So the dreams being broken perhaps are the illusions, right? The images. If we could somehow see past the illusion, then we could connect. And then we would know each other. But in order to do that, we have to exist in this sort of moment outside time, which means, in a sense, not being regular people. So anyway, so there's that possible way of thinking of it as being two people. The other way is to come back to the idea of Maya, this image of magic and illusion and the supernatural, as if that is the person speaking, and she's saying, I can trick you, I can confuse you. And then we move into the spoken English portion.
How would you know the difference between the virtual world and the real world? Maybe what you see with your eyes is all an illusion.
How do you know the difference between the virtual world and the real world? Maybe what you see with your eyes is all an illusion. So this is works on a number of different levels. First, of course, it plays into that idea, specifically because she says virtual, of this idea of the album, the other one, being representative of a different phase of the band, right? A different version of the band in some sort of parallel reality, a digital version. And this comes back to, you know, the strategies that the band were using during the pandemic to reach people when they couldn't tour, but also through a kind of refashioning of songs which had not been recorded before, but were probably already in existence in some form, which came to be the Other One album. So there's this sense that it's baby metal, but it's slightly different. So I think it taps into that general sense of the digital alter ego, which is the band. But there's a larger issue here, of course. So we want to not think too much about this being simply about the group themselves, about the larger question of how we perceive reality. So this is this is a song about epistemology, how we perceive what is real through our senses. And I think that this is a sort of a question philosophically that has been around for as long as we have as a species. But it's taken on a particular specificity in recent years because of shifts in the digital landscape, in artificial intelligence, and in, you know, what we might call deep fakes and things. The idea that we used to be able to trust our senses on some basic level. Seeing was believing. And now we're being presented with a situation where we know that seeing is not necessarily believing.
It's like if I put on virtual reality goggles, one part is that I can't see what is really there
Right.
because the goggles are blocking the real thing.
Right.
And then the goggles are playing a movie and I'm supposed to be in that virtual
You're
world.
part of that.
I'm part of that. So two things have happened. One is blocking what is real, and secondly, projecting some unreal narrative, some story, some fantasy, some whatever vision.
Right.
So Maya has both these purposes. Is what
These two functions.
Sidebar, I just watched the newest Indiana Jones movie, and the first 15 minutes of it really kind of messed with my head because I'm watching Harrison Ford as a 30-year-old guy in these sort of World War II sequences. And to me, it was utterly convincing. Some of the set stuff, some of the green screen environmental stuff, I think, was more clearly digital than the character. And I don't know exactly how it was done, but if somebody had said they've made this new Indiana Jones movie, but it incorporates footage that was shot 40 years ago, I might have believed that, because he seems completely credible as a 30-year-old guy. And that sort of freaks me out, right? And we're seeing versions of this all the time. So the old idea that you can trust what you see, you know, has received a new pressure, a new challenge through the forms of artificial intelligence and digital media. So I think it's absolutely true that everything is illusory. So the song is making this connection to, on the one hand, the supernatural, the goddess, and to broader philosophical ideas. But as soon as we use a word like virtual, I think it invokes the very particular condition of the 21st century world. Let's say something about the choreography of the thing. It's like there's a core paradox in the song, I think, that on the one hand, what we're getting is this really, really heavy metal kind of sound, but we're dealing with this idea which is in some ways quite esoteric. And I think that the choreography is kind of doing both, right? We're seeing both physically, we're seeing both images of power and strength, but we're also seeing images of seductive, attractive beauty, right? That some of the things that we see Moa and Momoko doing, particularly framing their faces and striking a kind of pose. And it does seem to sort of deliberately evoke this idea of beauty and of the fact that it is performative, right? And so even though I say I don't want the song to be about the band, I almost never want the song to be about the band, I do think that there's something going on here that suggests that the specific nature of the illusion that is being talked about and the way that it's misleading does seem to connect to the group themselves, who are, of course, famously private and who put on a particular kind of performance. And the fans make a connection with that performance, and we think that we know who they are. But we don't. What we're seeing is an illusion. It's not a representation of actual people. It's a performance put on to create a particular kind of effect. And I think I'm seeing that somewhat in the choreography. I should say that when I was talking about the more personal human version of what this song could be about, it's almost impossible not to think of the Destiny's Child song, Say My Name.
Say my name, say my name. If no one is around you, say baby I love you. If you ain't running game, say my name, say my name. You acting kinda shady, ain't calling me baby. Why the sudden change? Say my name, say my name.
Which is a song about human relationships and human jealousies, and a very specific narrative about people who feel like that their lover is looking elsewhere, who's having a relationship somewhere else, and they want to feel that connection that feels authentic to prove the relationship, right? So I think that idea of fans connecting with the band, idolizing them, which is central to a lot of Japanese music, is based on illusion, and it's reminiscent, I think, of that sort of more personal take on the song. There's a famous story of the movie actress Rita Hayworth, whose, one of her biggest films was Gilda from 1946, and she talks about how in her relationships, and she said that the men that she got involved with, they went to bed with Gilda, they woke up with me, which has always struck me as a very powerful image. I might have mentioned this before, but the idea of people falling in love with the illusion of the character that you play, and then coming to terms with the reality of the actual person that they're involved with, I think is really interesting and powerful, and I think relevant to this. Though again, I'm not saying that the song is specifically about that. I think it's more generally about the deceptive nature of everything, but particularly I think of art and performance.
You are the magic幻。魔法かけたら It's an illusion 輝かし見せるの夢語りならどうも儚い望みでも夜明けまで待ってきっと願いは叶うから
So next lyric, Say My Name, You're the Magic, Maboroshi, again, the illusion. Say My Name, Maho o Kaketara. It's an illusion, Mayakashi. Mizeru no Yumegatari nara no more. Hakanai nozomi demo yoake mare mate kito. Negai wa kanao kara. So again, Say My Name, You're the Magic, an illusion. Once I've cast this spell, it's an illusion, a fake, and I'll charm you with that deceptive strategy. And then if it's a pipe dream, if it's a fantasy, then I don't want it anymore. And even if the hope is fleeting, or wait till dawn on the hope that wishes will come true. So at this point we say, so same basic setup, and then we get this idea that if it is an illusion, if it's something that isn't real, then I'm not interested in it. And I'll hold on for truth. I'll hold on for something that's genuine rather than live with the illusion. So even though the illusion might be satisfying in some ways, it's not what I want. So I think this is partly where, it's clear that there are two speakers here. There's the person being deceived and there is the deceiver. And the person being deceived somehow recognizes that deception and says, if the deception is all there is, then finally I'm not interested. It could actually be the other way around, though, that if the person casting the spell recognizes that you can seduce or charm somebody with the spell, but if you know that the spell itself isn't real, then they're not interested either. So it could go either way. I love those little temporal bumps, those little shifts. It suddenly drops out and comes back in. It gives it a real emphatic punch. It lifts the register because, as I said, the song is structurally quite simple and quite repetitive, but those little abrupt shifts deliberately wrong foot you and give emphasis to what's coming.
You are the magic maboroshi.
Love that swell there that comes in the middle there. It's sort of holding, you hear that sort of digital, the sound retreating, and then it comes slamming back in like a sort of vortex. Great.
It's an illusion, Mayagashi. 消えるの夢落ちみたいなナイツ砕け散る朝まで目が覚めた時にはもうここにはいないから
Final verse, you're the magic, Maboroshi, say my name. Mahoga Toketara, say my name. It's an illusion, Mayakashi, say my name. Kieru no yumeochi mitai na night. Kurake chiru asamare. Mega semeta toki ni wa mo koko ni wa inai kara. So say my name, you're the magic, an illusion. Once the spell is lifted, and this is where the pronouns get tricky. Once the spell is lifted, since it's an illusion, a fake, something will be gone. I will be gone or you will be gone. Come back to that. As if it was all a dream, a kind of a conventional story ending. And the night will be broken up and I or you will wake up to know that, again, I or you is gone. So again, the pronouns make it, the lack of pronouns make it hard to pinpoint, but the implication is once the illusion goes away, then whatever was there also vanishes. The sense of relationship, the sense of connection also vanishes. And you'll wake. This is the way I read it. I think the idea is that when I remove the illusion, you wake up and I'm gone. Because what was connecting us was the illusion. And this is why I was saying that Rita Hayworth thing. Sometimes the only things that hold us together are the illusions that we have about each other, that we fashion because these are the things that attract us, the things that interest us. And sometimes that illusion is sustainable and sometimes it's not. And the moment you see through the illusion, whether you want to or not, then the relationship crumbles. That's the way I read it in human terms. I think, if you want to take it in a more general philosophical or digital fashion, then the song becomes a lot simpler. It becomes simply a question of that everything that we think we know is dependent on what it looks like. And when it turns out that things are not what they seem to be, then they collapse. In that sense, I think it's quite straightforward. I think if we expand the human dimension of it, if we start thinking of it as being the way that we have relationships between ourselves or relationships with something that we only know as a digital product, like a band on stage, right? Then we become dependent on this illusion. So I think the only other thing to say is that part of what makes the song so compelling, of course, is the I was going to say violence of it, but there's a real energy to it, a real driving pulse to it, which sits to me sort of oddly with the lyrical content. But it's like the band are saying, none of this is real. And you have to deal with it. You have to figure that out. The this means, I don't know, the world, what you're looking at on the computer screen, what you're looking at on stage, that everything is constructed out of illusions because this is the nature of human experience. There's something quite Platonic about this, right? The idea that we live in a world of shadows, that the truth of things is actually something that we can't perceive through ordinary reality, that we don't get to confront the reality of things within the actual human world because human world is based on deception and illusion. And this is all we're capable of perceiving. It's like Plato's cave, which is all very abstract and complicated for a legitimate metal banger, which is what the song clearly is. So maybe none of this matters. Yeah. But I think the core idea is clear. Everything that we see is not real. And when we are dependent on those things, when our sense of relationships and connections and such is built on those things, then we're building a castle on sand, right? Because the fundamental structures are not there. And from the perspective of the speaker of the song, by the end, it's like they recognize that if it's not real, if what's holding us together is not real, then it has no value. And of course, I should add that, I think, as I say, there are multiple meanings in play, and it is, of course, typical of baby metal that the song doesn't commit to one particular reading. So there are a number of possibilities, and as I've said before, I think that they want the audience or the listener to somehow complete the circle for them, to choose to participate in the making of meaning, to make the selection that makes the most sense or has the most power for them, either as an intellectual idea or as an emotional idea or what. So yeah, I think that the fact that there are different ways to read the song, it makes perfect sense to me. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so as ever, please like, comment, subscribe, check out my books, particularly, of course, Hideki Smith, Demon Queller. Check out my Patreon page. Thank you to all my patrons, my merchandise store. I can get shirts and stuff. And that's it. I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.